Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, in a week when England's Euro 2020 qualifier in Bulgaria is stopped because of racist abuse, players from Haringey Borough and Yeovil Town walked off the pitch during their FA Cup fourth qualifying round tie yesterday afternoon. VAR plays the hokey-cokey at White Hart Lane. Dele Alli's goal, it's given, then chalked off, then it's given during Tottenham's 1-1 draw with Watford, and Ole Gunnar Solskjær. He's come out fighting ahead of Manchester United's clash with Liverpool at Old Trafford this afternoon. Here to knock me off my perch this morning, Andy Dunn is the chief sports writer at the Mirror. Melissa Reddy is football correspondent with ESPN, and James Ducker is the Northern football correspondent with The Telegraph. Morning all, thanks very much for coming in this morning. Big game this afternoon, we're all going to it at Old Trafford. Don't forget you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup, the best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. Back of the Sun. Of course, Manchester United's clash with Liverpool dominating the papers this morning. It won't take us 30 years. That's Ole Gunnar Solskjær's message to Manchester United fans. Last title at Old Trafford, of course, when Fergie left in 2013. It won't take them that long to win it again, according to Solskjær. That's his press conference quotes ahead of that game. Made it onto the back of the People as well this morning. The Star. A different story, an exclusive. The Glazers, they rejected 2 United bids. This is from the Saudi royal family, according to Harry Pratt. A third, though, is on its way. The Sun's goals pull out. It's Dele Alli passing the screen test yesterday, eventually with the equaliser for Tottenham against Watford. Not a good performance, though, by Spurs. Andy was at Selhurst Park yesterday to watch this man in fine form, in fine fettle. Lovely goal from David Silva. The Manchester City captain, that volley from Raheem Sterling's pass. We'll talk about City a little bit later, as we will this man, Marco Silva. Did this result save him a 2-0 victory over West Ham yesterday at Goodison Park? Boy, did he need that result. Oliver Holt's column reflecting on events in Sofia on Monday night, throw Bulgaria out of the Euros. Anything else would be a victory for the racists. That's Ollie's message in his column this morning. And his column, Ross Barkley, the only winner on a night of shame in Bulgaria. That's in the Mirror this morning. And the Sunday Times, they had a little change up yesterday. Players walking off the pitch after racist abuse in that FA Cup tie, that fourth qualifying round tie yesterday between Haringey Borough and Yeovil Town, which is where we'll start. We'll talk about England in a few moments' time, Andy, but because this is such an unusual situation as well, it's unprecedented that the players from both teams walked off the pitch in solidarity, ultimately, yes. And the managers have spoken well and with conviction about this incident, or these various incidences yesterday. What happens next here? In a weekend, of course, when the Premier League made a big thing, huge campaign. Yes. No room for racism in the sport. There's room for passion, there's room for rivalry, but no room for racism. But this is at the lower end of the scale, semi-professional.
It is at the lower end, Neil. But if you remember, just quickly going back to Bulgaria, and what the Bulgarian coach said was that English football has issues throughout the tiers of English football. And I think he'd clearly been informed of the allegations of racial abuse at the National League game between Hartlepool and Dover. And now this is further down the pyramid, if you like, and it's happening there. So that, in a way, it was a very... It's a horrible but a very pertinent reminder of what a lot of people said in the wake of what happened in Sofia, and that was, don't forget, as abhorrent as that was in Bulgaria, you've got your own issues at home that are still there, still prevalent. If anything, maybe creeping back into the game on a bigger level that need to be addressed. And now this comes along. In terms of what should happen, in theory, I guess they could be punished. Either Haringey or Yeovil or both could be punished for leaving the field. However, fundamentally, that cannot happen. You can come up with all the protocols, all the regulations, all the letters and numbers of rules that you want. But if a man is being racially abused in his workplace and decides to leave the field and decides to leave his workplace, that's got to be his right. And, we don't know because we haven't been in that situation. No one's come to me and racially abused me in my place of work. So I don't know how I would react. But I know one thing, they've got every right to react as they did yesterday, just as England players would have every right to walk off the field on Monday. So what will happen now is the FA will have to be, clearly they've announced an investigation. It will have to be swift. The game will have to be replayed and the winners go through. And if it's replayed without any fans, then so be it.
Melissa, what ideas, what can we do to change the culture in the sport at the moment? It feels like it's a volatile period.
Yeah, I think yesterday was significant because everyone knows there's issues all throughout the tiers of English football. It's been spoken about, but it's always sort of under the carpet because it's not high profile enough. It's not Paul Pogba receiving racist messages on Twitter, which then kicks everybody into gear and makes, front pages, and there's a big hoo-ha about it with everyone trying to take the moral high ground and asking for change. But the teams walking off in solidarity was pivotal, absolutely, because now it shows you there is a problem. The clubs are accepting that there's a massive problem. The FA is. And I think it's Yeovil, by the way, how their manager and their players handled it. They need all the credit because it's so easy to, in that environment, think, we've got a sporting advantage here. Let's just take it. And I thought their manager saying, I want to win at all costs, but there's lines you do not cross, and I don't want to be supportive or encourage or let racial discrimination stand in any sort of way. So I think it's important that it's at the forefront. How do we move forward? I think the punishment needs to center around those that are guilty. Racial abuse is not rivalry. It's not, it's just heightened tribalism. It's a crime, and it needs to be punished as a crime. We need to improve across all levels the footage, access to the footage, the taking better sort of witness statements from everybody around, making sure that at every game there are people there who are able to report, to record and report footage. We've seen that the issue in other countries, in some leagues, in Italy and stuff, that there's no real sort of commitment to ensuring that all these incidences are fully covered and reported, and you can have all the sort of weight to take the necessary actions that you should do. So yeah, like I said, whatever the strongest possible fines in terms of banning, in terms of putting people behind bars, because like I said, it is a crime.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on what happened yesterday, James?
I mean, it's obviously appalling. As Andy said, it is a pertinent reminder after what happened in Sofia. But I think this is a big challenge for the FA. I mean, we've talked a lot about what happened, this week. We've condemned what's happened in Bulgaria. This is a challenge now, I think, for the FA, and we all know the wheels move very slowly at that organisation. But this is time sensitive, really. They've got an imminent first round draw coming up. I think Haringey play on Tuesday night. There's not going to be that big a window to act here, and I think that'll be. It's really going to have to focus minds, I think, at the FA. I mean, this is a new situation that it presented, but I don't think this has happened before, has it? So, and I think particularly given what happened in the England game, there is a heightened scrutiny around this now. I think all eyes are going to be on the FA and a look at what they're going to do next. And I think the message that they send out at this point is going to be very important. I mean, I don't like to talk in watershed moments because we've all hoped and expected that there would be watershed moments in the past, and we're still talking about it. Nothing seems to ever change. But I think this is going to be a critical point for the FA, and it's certainly going to be a critical point for UEFA as well.
I've got to say, James, if I was editing a paper tomorrow, because as you say, time sensitive, yes. It's limited to what you can actually write about this morning. But tomorrow morning, I would expect a minute-by-minute account of what happened in that match, because we, with the best will in the world, we don't know a great deal about Haringey Borough, the circumstances, and so much about Yeovil Town. Of course, now in the fifth tier, but that'll be my anticipation tomorrow. So the event isn't forgotten about.
Absolutely.
Or ignored, because it's an FA Cup, because it's the FA Cup, and of course, this story now has worldwide profile.
Absolutely. I mean, just quickly on that last night. I mean, I guess desks last night. Sunday papers obviously are normally published earlier than daily papers, and then getting all the facts straight.
If people are wondering why this story has only got...
But they have reacted to it. The papers have reacted to it. It's on a page lead here. It's on the front page of the Sunday Times. They have reacted to it. Going back to the FA Cup, I think people, first of all, need to know what a massive game this was. It's not just Haringey Borough versus Yeovil Town. This is for a place for Haringey Borough to get into the first round of the FA Cup proper. Yeah. That is a huge deal to non-league teams, a massive deal to a team like Haringey Borough. Yet their manager is saying, I don't care if we're kicked out of the competition, I don't care if the result goes against us, I don't care if the FA punish us. It must have been, they were that seriously affected by it that they walked off in what, for probably a few of those players, was probably the biggest game of their careers so far. Let's not just think it's a non-league game, down on some park pitch somewhere. It was a big game. And that's why it needs to be now at the forefront of the FA's minds of what they're going to do about it. I really do. And I just think that, just going back to this idea that, and I totally agree with what Melissa's saying about the culprits individually have to face the law. Now we've got 12, 14 arrests in Bulgaria, I think. People who were identified, who were clearly visible on camera, giving out this abuse. And that's what needs to happen in this country. And then the decision on what actually happens to clubs whose fans, in inverted commas, carry out these acts.
Now that one team, or two teams, have walked off the pitch, Melissa, do you think that others put in similar situations across all levels of the sport will now do the same? Absolutely.
That's how you force change. You have to, unfortunately, put the powers that be in a position where it's not about hashtags and slogans on balls and fancy little programs or any of that sort, because clearly we're in a position... You don't think that makes a difference? No, it does not make any difference. And the whole argument about you just need better education. I'm sorry, but there are very well-educated people, and we see them in government and stuff, who hold similar views. So it's not an educational problem. It is you have to punish that kind of behaviour with the strongest tools at your disposal, which, like I said, it's a criminal act. So you deal with it that way. But yeah, the hashtags and stuff do absolutely nothing. And I have to say, I know this will get dealt with because it's now high profile, it's received coverage. There's, like you said, because of what happened in Bulgaria and English football reacting so strongly to that, the world will be looking at this. But it shouldn't be solved because of all that stuff. It should be solved because it's absolutely unacceptable and nobody should have that in their workplace. And anyone who says things like, well, at the upper levels of the game, you get things like they get paid enough, they should be able to deal with that. Absolutely not. And obviously it's not the case in this situation anyway.
But the whole idea of walking off, it's one that, as I say, because we've never been in that situation before, you don't know how you would react. But out in Sofia on Monday night, now I know several of our colleagues believe they should have walked off. Darren Libas, colleague of mine on the Daily Mirror, believes they should have walked off. I think Henry Winter was an advocate of them walking off. To me, being there in that stadium that night and then talking to the players after the game and the manager, somehow I would have had myself before the game saying, if it happens, walk off. But somehow at the end of the game, it felt like they did the right thing to me. It felt like the players actually went through the right process, did the right thing. I have to say, Andy, after 42 minutes when the game stopped for a second time, I didn't think the game would finish. No, me neither. And my argument would be, and I wrote it on Friday, my argument would be that in that case, should it not be taken out of the players' hands? You were sat in the stands alongside me, the UEFA officials were there, it was, you could hear it, it was plain, it was clear. Should that not be the UEFA officials? Sorry, Andy, do you know what, I'm just going to say at this point, I didn't hear it. I'm not disputing anybody's account or anybody's version. I saw Chris Powell yesterday at Palace briefly. He was in the dugout alongside Gareth Southgate, Steve Holland, all the substitutes, and he said he heard it very, very clearly. What concerns me is Melissa's point. Why aren't UEFA taking statements from Chris Powell, from Gareth Southgate, from Eddie Keogh, the FA's photographer, who was stationed on the running track or in the perimeter
right in front of the supporters who we believe were making the monkey chants,
Yes.
and also certainly and definitely the supporters making the Nazi salutes. Why aren't these guys being spoken to by UEFA? First thing you do.
It's a rhetorical question. I don't know why. I don't know why.
But your best
I would have
at
thought
that
so.
moment, the best time to take a witness statement from
Absolutely.
someone is in the moments after the event.
Absolutely.
Not 3 days later, not 3 weeks later,
But listen-
when it's very easy to change somebody's mind or influence it.
Who knows what goes on there in the minds of UEFA officials? Listen, I know it was only anecdotal, but I before the game, I saw the UEFA officials who were staying in my hotel, sort of, getting into the limos to go for what was a 10-minute walk to the stadium, ordering their dinner before they got into the limo. I mean, literally, they would take the menu so the dinner was ready for them when they got there. Now, I'm not begrudging them any hospitality at games. We've all been there. But the UEFA officials' job at the game, I think, and that's why I think they should have the job of deciding whether that game, they take the players off. Because the players they've got vested interests in the game. There's different players will want different things. It's okay the England players saying, well, if one wants to go off, we would all go off. I believe them in that case, but someone's probably thinking, well, do I really want to say I want to go off if they're saying they want to stay on? Is that a display of weakness from me? If the players say, right, let's stay on and let's teach these morons a lesson and let's whip Bulgaria 6-7-0 and that'll show them, and that's the best way of responding. If you're another player and you actually don't think that you want to go off, are you really going to stand up in the dressing room at half-time and say, well, actually, lads, I think we should go off? If Raheem Sterling says, "Come on, guys, we're staying on here. We're gonna, we're gonna stick it to them," is someone else going to say that? That's why I think it should be actually an official decision. And you might say the referee, but the referee's got enough on his plate without having to listen out. I mean, you said you're in the stadium and you didn't hear much of it, if any at all. But why about the referee? He's concentrating the game. It should be UEFA officials now in the stands who say, right, we've heard this, we can see it.
Yeah. I just want to make it clear. I didn't not hear it in the way the Bulgarian manager did.
Yes, I know what you mean, because
I just didn't hear it.
It wasn't clear to us.
But I don't dispute
it was actually more clear to us in the stadium on our laptops, seeing the social media reaction from television pictures back home than it was. I mean, we were far back, and we were right next to the England fans, which were quite loud.
I think a huge.
Kicker. Sorry, James. It's not a surprise. People were expecting it to happen there. So again, the lack of reaction, and why does it always have to be reactive? Why can it not be proactive? Because, like I say, Bulgaria has previous, and again, this is not a case of England, the moral high ground, the white knights or whatever, but there's been instances, and part of the stadium was closed because of their previous. So you know what the environment is you're going into, and for the entire process of it to be so lackluster when you know it's going to happen, it's just mind-boggling.
I think because we don't because we don't have a. I think, as Andy said, because we don't have a system in place whereby if there is racist abuse, the protocol is you leave the field. The burden is instantly placed, I think, on the black players in that team. I mean, there's a captain, but Rashford, Raheem Sterling, Tyrone Mings. I mean, I can have a good guess at how they felt, but I'm never going to fully be able to understand that. Now, Tyrone Mings, he's making his debut, he's playing very well, and he's brave enough to actually call it out in the first half. But he's been racially abused. You don't know how that affects his state of mind. And he and Raheem and Marcus Rashford, if I was one of the white players in that team, I'd be like, I would back and support what they wanted to do. And I think the burden that is then placed on them in that situation where Mings is making his debut, he's being racially abused, and they're now having to make a call about what they're going to do. I find that incredible, really, that they could allow a player to be put in that situation. And I would never sort of stand there saying, oh, they must go off, because, well, I think that's their call in that moment. But we're talking about UEFA, though, and putting systems in place. And I know this got aired in the week, but I remember at the Porto game, Manchester City's Porto game in 2011-12 season, and Yaya Toure and Mario Balotelli were racially abused, monkey chants during the game. Porto got fined £16,000 in that game. City got fined £24,000 for turning up less than 60 seconds late for the second half. I mean, that is where we are with UEFA. And I was chatting to representatives of one of the black players in the England team this week, and they're getting tired of the constant talk and debate about racism with actually no very, very severe punishment that comes with it. Because now, unfortunately, the ignorant idiots out there, I think, I'm looking at them now, and these incidents are happening more and more, they're almost viewed as a badge of honour. You know, it's in the public consciousness so much that they're like, oh, great, we'll join in on this. They're doing that, we'll join in. And until there's expulsions, until there's points deductions, until there is very, very severe punishment right across the board, you know, we're not going to be able to change societal problems. And there's a statistic this week that something like a quarter of all terrorism threats in this country are now related to sort of a rise in far-right violence. I mean, you know, that is a worry. We have got a societal problem, but football can do its bit. Yep. And it isn't doing.
No, I agree. Big week for the FA. Certainly, we've got to deal with the fallout from Bulgaria and also yesterday's FA Cup tie, which was abandoned between Haringey Borough and Yeovil Town. OK, next up, we're going to talk about the game. It's at Old Trafford this afternoon. It's Manchester United. They're playing Liverpool. More on that coming next. Welcome back. OK, big game this afternoon at Old Trafford. It's Manchester United against Liverpool. Ollie's war. He says that Manchester United, it won't take them 30 years to win a league title. A little bit of a dig at Liverpool. It's going to take them 30 years, maybe more. Good start to the season for them with a 100% record in the Premier League. But how is he dealing? How is Ole Gunnar Solskjær dealing with what is a massive game, a pivotal game for Manchester United and their season, if not his future, but certainly their season? And the way it's gone so far, because when they walked off the pitch against Newcastle in their last league game, it looked as though they were out of ideas, James.
Yeah, I mean, he's been quite bullish, and I mean, he's an ultra optimistic individual anyway, and he's definitely been that way for a long time. After Newcastle, it looked like something had changed in him. I think he was looking at it and thinking, what have I got on my hands here? And then he was pretty bullish again. He was pretty bullish again this week. There's very much a feeling that it was naive to go into this season allowing Lukaku and Sanchez to go without bringing in a striker. And certainly this week he was absolutely insistent that those decisions needed to be made and standing by what is ultimately a short-term gamble, and that is already backfired and the pressure is mounted. And we hear constantly from Solskjær and from Ed Woodward, the Executive Vice Chairman, that they have a wider plan. And there is a semblance of a plan there in place. You can see it, but that can very, very quickly get overtaken by the short term if results spiral so dramatically. And there is a huge, I would always argue, I mean, I've covered the club a long time, there is a greater scrutiny and pressure around United than probably any club in Europe, even in England, even the side that they're facing today, Old Trafford. And, you know, it is an enormous job. And I look at the situation at the moment and it feels like it's unravelling. It feels like a club that has got serious problems on the pitch, and they've had a bad injury crisis, clearly. It was but the problem is with that transfer policy that they had in the summer, it left no wiggle room whatsoever for injuries. And also, it's placing an enormous burden on some young players. And one of the big issues on the pitch is that there is a complete vacuum of senior players. I mean, you've got De Gea, who's 28, you've got Harry Maguire, who's just come in for a world record fee. There are no senior players that you will look at and think, I'll hang my hat on you. I was chatting to Gary Pallister this week.
Soldiers.
Soldiers was chatting to Gary Pallister this week about 89 and, you know, Fergie's winter of discontent, and it's the worst start that they've obviously had since then. And he said...
Is that you with the Tommy Docherty?
It was bad. Yeah. It was bad, but they had Brian Robson, Steve Bruce, Viv Anderson, Mark Hughes, Brian McClare. They had strong, big personalities in the dressing room. Who is Daniel James looking to now? Who is Marcus Rashford looking to? I mean, we're looking at Marcus Rashford. I wrote about this yesterday. People look at Marcus Rashford now and think he's almost like 25, 26. He's younger than Tammy Abraham. And he is carrying the burden of leading that attack. There's no other big club in Europe that is expecting as much of a young 21-year-old centre-forward or striker as Man United are expecting of Marcus Rashford. It's too big a burden, it's too much, too soon. And
Shouldn't Paul Pogba be that type of
Yeah,
crowd?
but I mean, he should be.
That's who
But he doesn't want to be at the club. I mean,
Yeah. Or his agent doesn't want him to
Solskjaer's
be
come
at the
out
club.
this week and said he does want to be here. Well, all the noises during the summer,
Yes.
all the noises from his agent. He's been injured. He's a massive loss for them. For all the criticism he has had, he's the best player in the team. He's by far their most creative midfielder. You take him out, and I think Rashford are probably the first to argue, who's feeding me? So I think they've got chronic short-term problems, and it's almost to think about, can he get enough results in the short term to buy him enough time to get to the summer? Because I mean, January is a very tough window.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to be able to get him what they want. Can they get enough results that give them an acceptable finish? And I think a top half finish, the club would accept this season. The problem is,
Do you think they would accept a top
Yes.
half finish? Manchester United.
I do. But the problem is if they get dragged down into a relegation battle, and you look. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you look, they've got the runaway Premier League leaders today. They go to Belgrade, which will be testing from a travel point of view, nothing else, and then they go to Carrow Road on Sunday. Long journey there after Belgrade, not an easy game at all. There's no easy games for United at the moment. So,
Then it's Chelsea after that, isn't it? The Carabao
I think
Cup.
the League Cup. So it's every week is big, and the longer the results go, the pressure just turns up that.
Come on, Melissa, put a spit and polish on this situation at Manchester United, because it's all bad, according to James.
I can't help with that. I think you hear a lot of noises coming out of the club that the off-the-field structure has greatly improved in terms of, the scouting process, in terms of due diligence and all that stuff. United have spent something like £900 million post-Ferguson. And this is the state we're in. This is the discussion we're having about that team. Solskjær, they say his vision and the club's vision are aligned, give youth a chance, play exciting football, and be what Manchester United stands for, that sort of swagger and, big club mentality. I think no matter how good your structure is, and by the way, there's question marks, as I said, if you spend that much of money and you're in the situation where all the responsibility is lying with young players who should be eased into a situation rather than having to shoulder it. And where your basic principles as a team, as one of the biggest clubs in world football, those are basic. That's not like a massive philosophy or a methodology that you think to yourself, yeah, that's definitely going to get them where they need to go. But regardless of all that, I think no matter how good you think your structure is, the person underpinning it, the manager, is the one that unifies it, right? With Liverpool, before Jurgen Klopp came in, the people in charge of Liverpool's transfers are exactly the same as the people in charge of Liverpool transfers. Now, they were derided under Brendan Rodgers because there was a lot of friction, there was competing egos. The process wasn't joined up because the person underpinning it did not have the sort of power, and the visions weren't aligned to unify everything. Now, I like Solskjær. Great player for United. I think he's got all the right intentions. Is he the person to resurrect, to unify, to bring a vision to life? Because what Klopp did to Liverpool was took that structure that was derided and made it one that elsewhere in Europe people are looking at it and thinking, hang on, that's what we should be copying. And like I said, it's the same sort of processes, but with somebody with the charisma, with the excellence, with the intelligence, and by the way, with the CV that you bought into and you believed in because you've seen him reconstruct a club. We haven't seen that with Solskjær. And before he got made caretaker manager, he was never in United's thoughts to be their permanent manager. He wasn't the man United were looking at thinking to themselves, this is the guy that's going to put Manchester United back where they belong. The caretaker spell happened. the results were brilliant, which is what you expect. You want that short-term manager bounce. You know that a caretaker manager comes in, reinvigorates the mood, players have freedom and all that stuff. And an emotional, sentimental decision was made rather than a long-term, clever football decision. And that's where I think, we speak about greater due diligence. For me, I don't think they have it yet.
There's a theme across the papers this weekend that if Manchester United managed to appoint Jurgen Klopp, then things would be very, very different. Is it as simple as that?
No, it's not as simple as that at all. It took Klopp some time at Liverpool. It wasn't an overnight sensation at Liverpool. He didn't just come in and revolutionise things instantly.
League Cup final
League
first
Cup
season.
final, Europa League final, beat Borussia Dortmund, United, Manchester City.
He had some big results, didn't he?
There's some big results, yeah, absolutely. Same way as, Solskjær had some big results when he started off. Listen, it was an emotional appointment, I guess, but it was on the back of a set of good results. There's no getting away from that. Is he the man? I'm not sure. But what I do know is
Were you sure at the time?
Oh no! I personally wouldn't have given the job personally, but I understand why they did.
What were you going to? What else could you do?
I understand why they gave him the job.
There was no reason to give it to him permanently at that stage. You leave it till the end of the season and judge.
Not unless Edward Wood, having worked with him for that time, was hugely impressed with him. And he clearly was, and he clearly still is.
Andy, I think
sure.
Jonathan Northcroft's piece this morning, I think it's John's piece in the Sunday Times, and John has been super critical of Ed Woodward and the regime over the last few months, or probably years actually. But what he does say is that after 2 games, Woodward and Ole Gunnar Solskjær met in the manager's office, and Solskjær produced the
flip chart.
Yeah, the flip. Yeah,
with
the team in 3 years' time.
We had the team now, the team that was there now, an analysis of all the players, and then, to Woodward's amazement, he flips the chart over, and there's where he sees the team in 3 years' time, with gaps from players who've been taken out of the team, out of that squad, and that's where the rest.
If you're that easily won over, then you've got problems.
A flip
chart, not Bundesliga titles or a Champions League final, a flip chart.
But if he does buy in, listen, I know one thing is you can't keep bumping managers at the rate that Ed Woodward is doing at the moment, and he knows that. He knows, to get through, if he was to sack Solskjær, to get through, 4 in 6 years, something like that, would be, in less than 6 years, 4 in 6 would be just, it's not a good look. If he genuinely does buy into this idea, like he says, Edward Wood, that Solskjær has this long-term vision, he believes in it, Woodward believes in it, then I'm afraid that there's got to be a recalibration of short-term expectations. So you laughed then when me and James both said top half will be okay this season. I'm afraid.
Andy, it's Man United.
I know it's Man United, but that's how you're
£900 million
recalibrating.
in 6 years.
Yes, they have, but maybe but some of those. But the transfer policy, again, and another theme that's come out of Old Trafford is that the recruitment policy under Moyes initially, then to a certain extent under Van Gaal, and even under Mourinho wasn't good enough. The process wasn't good enough, and we all know there was quite high-profile signings that didn't work out. We know there was players they went for they couldn't get. The idea now is they've got the recruitment process where they want it to be. And they could point to the fact that, well, actually, we signed Harry Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Daniel James in the summer. And if you want to take some crumbs of comfort from United's start of the season, those 3 players have probably provided them.
Yeah.
So they may say, OK, well, give us... I certainly know one thing. I certainly know that January is difficult to buy in. United have done it successfully before. I think they signed Evra in a January window, and Vidic. But next summer is going to be one of their biggest transfer windows in their recent history.
Just one thing I think with United is they're going down the road of a young age profile squad. And I totally understand that. That's fine. But if you are going to do that, then your manager has to be a coach who develops talent. Klopp, outstanding coach. Guardiola, outstanding coach. And I make no... Yes. Apologies for mentioning those 2 because that's what United are up against. But then Pochettino, Conte, Simeone. People talk about their backroom teams. They're the geniuses. They are on the training field leading, and they're the ones with the ideas. They're driving it. They are developing. They are improving players. And I'm not just talking about improving young players. Look at what's happened to De Bruyne and Sterling, David Silva since Guardiola's come in. So. I think there's a lot of theory behind the scenes that Solskjær is ticking a lot of boxes, and I think he's done a lot of good behind the scenes. The big question is, and we simply don't know because there isn't the track record there. Is he a good enough coach to develop the talent that they bring in? And even if that talent is the right talent, is he going to be enough to bring them? Is he going to be able to devise a tactical framework within which that talent can maximise itself? And we simply do not know the answers to them. And I heard it said this week, you can't learn on the job as Man United manager. Well, we can always improve, but you can't literally learn on the job. And they've appointed the Mulder manager who took Cardiff City down. I mean, you can't get away from that. Jurgen, they admire what Liverpool have done an awful lot. But as Melissa said, Jurgen Klopp won back-to-back Bundesliga titles. He broke the Bayern Munich stranglehold. I mean, that takes some serious doing. You know, he got to a Champions League final. He had serious pedigree. He built a team, and you could see what he's done. There just is not that there with Solskjær. And he's unfortunate that he's inherited a very bad hand, and I think he has done some good things. But he's also going up against two absolute master managers.
You look at
I've got a lot of sympathy for him.
Sorry, so that'll have to be the final point. In the next few minutes, I'm going to talk some sense into the guests this morning so that Manchester United can't spend £900 million and target 10th place finish in the Premier League. You just can't do that. And then after that, we're going to talk about this man. Delhi Vision scored Tottenham's equaliser yesterday against Watford. It was a controversial equaliser. More on that coming next. Welcome back. I think I managed to convince the guests that Manchester United can target fourth anyway. They're only 8 points off it. It'll be 5 if they beat Liverpool today. Let's just remind you who is with us this morning. Andy Dunn, Melissa Reddy and James Ducker. Let's have a look at the papers again. Sunday People, Ollie's War. He says it won't take United 30 years to win another Premier League title. They are already 6 years into the project. Could be 7 by the end of the season. Glazers, they rejected 2 United bids. This is the back of the Star this morning. It says the Saudi royal family have already made 2 bids for United. A third is imminent. Some of the action yesterday at Goodison Park. Marco Silva, we'll talk about him in a few moments' time. He needed this result as Everton manager beating West Ham yesterday. Silver service at Palace yesterday too. Andy was there, I was there too, to see Manchester City win 2-0 against Crystal Palace. David Silva, lovely volley, sweet chip from Raheem Sterling in the build-up to that goal. Sunday Times, disturbing story. We've talked about that in part 1 this morning. The players from Haringey Borough and Yeovil Town walking off in their FA Cup qualifying tie yesterday. The FA investigating, as you would expect. Ollie Holt's column, throw Bulgaria out of the Euros. Anything less will be a victory for the racists. We'll talk about this now. Front of the goals, pull out in the sun. Delhi Vision, controversial equaliser yesterday for Tottenham, particularly because the goal was given, then seemed to be ruled out on screen, Melissa, 86 minutes in. And then eventually, after the Watford celebrations had subsided, the goal was given and Tottenham equalised and the game finished 1-1. But pretty chaotic. What do we think about the mistakes of the technology yesterday and the emotions and the difficulties that it clearly caused in that environment, in that stadium yesterday?
I was at Stockley Park ahead of the start of the season to go and see how VAR worked. I wanted to know everything, and all the points they made on that day and at the start of the season, which they were trying to fulfill, i.e. better communication, the explanation of decisions, why things were changed upon review, why things weren't changed upon review, through the official Twitter account, and it would be on the Premier League website as well, where the Match Centre would analyse all that stuff, has eroded. Now, the communication error yesterday, Hawkeye apologised for it, so it had nothing to do with the clubs or whatever. It's the fault of Hawkeye and the technology. That shouldn't have been allowed to happen, but the decision itself, Dele Alli's goal, comes off his bicep. With the handball rule that we've seen and the decisions that the goals that have been ruled out, that fits into that category. So completely understand Watford not realising why the goal is stood. Then you have VAR, which says there's a high bar for intervention. When they said that, did they mean that bar is stoned or elevated? Because I'm now starting to wonder this bar is so high that no one can see it or no one knows where it is or what it is. Because how you cannot give a penalty to Deulofeu for Vertonghen's challenge, who had like 3 bites at him, I just don't understand anymore. They say they do not want to re-referee the games, okay? But they also said VAR was brought in to make the correct decisions. And the amount of incorrect decisions we're getting, or the amount of times we've had there'll be a review and there'll be no change just because they don't want to impinge on the referee, then what is the point of the technology? What is the point of even reviewing it if it's so obvious, like Vertonghen's one?
Do you consider, Melissa, VAR is re-refereeing the game?
No. You brought it in to make the correct calls, right? And yes, there are decisions that are subjective and stuff, but there are situations where it is so blatantly obvious and clear, like Vertonghen's yesterday. Yes.
When you went, this is just an idea, but because it's very easy for us to sit and we clearly have the benefit of watching various replays, and we will all have our views on it. But did they give you the opportunity at Stockley Park to give you an event in another league that you haven't seen? So maybe take a Bundesliga game, a game you haven't seen, and all of a sudden put you in the chairman list and say, okay, VAR, the fans waiting. You've got 60,000 people waiting in, Bayern Munich Stadium, Borussia Dortmund. Say, okay, Melissa, what's the decision? Because the fans, we're waiting.
Yeah, I sat in the chair.
Did you press the right button?
Yeah, I was the VAR. I had the assistant providing me with all the angles and stuff, and it is incredibly difficult to make a decision. But
they are trained professionals, though.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was just.
No, but I wanted to know what it felt like, and you know what it feels like to be given a decision.
Yes, but I am not. I'm not qualified to do that. If you say to me, write 800 words, and you have to do it in 2 hours, and you ask a referee to do that, it's a completely different scenario, right? I'd be able to, he wouldn't. So, it should be difficult for me because I'm not qualified to do that, and I'll never pretend to be. But
don't give managers ideas.
But with the benefit of all the angles and stuff you get, and I think there's now a obsession with the officials thinking how much time is it taking. But if you're going to have this process anyway, right? Rather get the decision correct than obsess about all the other things. Obsess about, are we impinging on the referee? Are we doing this? You have the referee review area that at Stockley Park they said minimal use if it's something that the referee wouldn't ordinarily have thought, like the decision he's getting from the VAR doesn't make sense to him, or he's actually not seen the incident. We've not seen that area being used at all, and you think to yourself, you've put this process in and you want people to get on board, but you're not enacting it properly. So if you're not going to get the correct decisions, what is the point?
And one of those is the Vertonghen decision yesterday on Deulofeu, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah, it is. And I think what that highlights is actually looking at a broader aspect to VAR. Because it's still a work in progress, we know that when we say it's not being enacted properly, we don't actually know how it should be enacted to a certain extent. We're still finding our way, they're still finding their feet. What I would say is the one thing I have noticed, both from the Vertonghen incident there and from an incident of the game I was at when Wilfried Zaha on Kevin De Bruyne, which we might talk about later, but from those incidents, that typifies what VAR has been like. It's not giving penalties, it's not producing goals, it's not giving penalties. It's more. It seems to be more concerned with outlawing goals that they see an infringement. It's okay, Dele Alli's goal stood, but the one Burnley's against Leicester didn't stand. Now, if that trip on Johnny Evans had been, say, reversed in the opposition penalty area, and VAR was asked, was that a penalty or not? And if Evans was attacking rather than defending, I can guarantee you VAR wouldn't have said that's a penalty if it hadn't been given. But they did consider it an infringement, and he could have stopped the goal. So what I'm trying to say is, VAR isn't intervening to give penalties when the referee has not given it. And I don't think it's done it once. I don't think it's happened once in 90 decisions that they have not given a penalty. We all thought at the start of the season this will end up with, let's back, if you're a betting man, and gamble away and all that. But if you're a betting man, guys who take penalties will have a field day this season because VAR will be given loads of penalties that the referee hasn't seen. But that's not happening. That is not happening. And that one in particular yesterday, Vertonghen on Deulofeu, but it was just, there's no ifs or buts. It was a stonewall penalty. It was an absolute, no matter what
that's
camera angle you look for.
Clear and obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been any more clear, any more obvious. It really couldn't. I mean, I just literally could not have been more clear and obvious. It was a penalty.
OK. Let's talk about the game itself. Tottenham drawing at home to Watford. That is not an ideal result for that club. At least they didn't lose. But were there any signs yesterday, from what you saw, James, of Tottenham's players and that club uniting?
I think, look, I mean, Watford they had 8 put past them by City, didn't they, at the bottom of the table. I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, Tottenham are at home. They have to win that game. They have to win that game, and I don't think too many fans will be sort of accentuating that many positives over it. I mean, I spent a bit of time with Spurs during the summer in Singapore and Shanghai, and I mean, he's very good at the cryptic remark, Pochettino, but you could just tell something wasn't quite right. And there was a point where he was asked about the transfers, and he almost went off at a tangent and said, look, if the signing doesn't come off, it's all my fault. But we all sort of share the burden, and it just didn't sit right. And you look at that squad now, and I think he's been trying to change it for quite a bit of time, and it's not happened. And it looks stale. It looks like there's sort of senior players there who've been a long time. I mean, how long's Rose been wanting to get out? Vertonghen's in his last year.
How long since Rose did the interview that he gave to Dave Kidd of the Sun, which hinted at a dissatisfaction.
Eriksen,
and that's just drifted on.
Eriksen,
and I didn't see the full game yesterday, but apparently Rose didn't cover himself. And you end up with saying, who were the wing backs yesterday, Rose and Aurier? Well, I'm sorry, but these are players who are not going to make a difference now in the type of form they're in. Yet Spurs have contrived to let Kyle Walker and Kieran Trippier both leave the club. It just doesn't feel right.
If you end up with 4 or 5 players who don't really want to be, I mean, Eriksen obviously wants to move. Yeah. Rose has wanted to move for a long time. Alderweireld's future's been discussed for a long time. I mean, Vertonghen's in his final year. That can't help the dressing room. It can't help the dressing room. I think the other point is he's been there 5 years, Pochettino now. I mean, I do think in this country we're still influenced by what happened with Ferguson and Wenger. 5 years is a long time. I mean, you listen to people like even Guardiola, and they're like 3 or 4 year cycle. 4 years is an amazing achievement.
And they get burned out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the same messages and the same, fantastic coach. He's done amazingly, Pochettino. But, it can get repetitive.
James, we have to leave it there. Next up, though, we're going to talk about events at Sellers Park. Andy and myself were there yesterday to watch Manchester City run out 2-0 winners against Crystal Palace. OK, let's talk about events at Sellers Park last night. I think Andy needs a bigger byline in the in America. Can't hardly find it, can you? Where is it? Oh, here it is. Big names.
More up-to-date one, maybe.
Quite right. Let's talk about Kevin De Bruyne and Pep's reaction after the game.
Oh yes.
I thought it was a penalty, but what does he get? What was Pep getting at?
He was very, very surly, wasn't he? I don't know whether in that press conference he was very annoyed. Well, what happened was the score was at 2-0 to Manchester City. Pep was getting very frustrated that City didn't score a third and put the game beyond Palace. They missed a load of good chances, and one in particular, when Jesus broke clear and should have just squared it for a tap-in for De Bruyne, instead tried himself, and Wayne Hennessy saved, and Pep was particularly annoyed about that. And then Kevin De Bruyne went clear into the box. Zaha was tracking back, and they both went down in a heap, quite spectacularly. Referee Anthony Taylor didn't give a penalty. VAR checked on it and decided there wasn't enough. I mean, from where my instinct was that De Bruyne had maybe slightly checked his run into the path of Zaha, causing the collision, and that's why Anthony Taylor didn't give it. When you looked at it again, had he given it, VAR wouldn't have overturned it, and I don't think many people would have many complaints had he given it. But Pep in the press conference he just kept repeating that he's a diver, he kept saying. Next. And then we'd ask another question about it. He's a diver. Next. On to the next question. And he was implying that they don't get any penalties from VAR. He's implying there's, he was being dripping with sarcasm, as if to say Kevin De Bruyne's a diver. So he was very annoyed about that. He was quite surly all round, to be honest with you, after the game.
Why?
I don't know. I think he is so just hyper intense, isn't he? He should have been relieved. They played okay, City. They played well. Their performance, of course, was highlighted by an absolute peach of a goal for that second one just before half-time from David Silva. So he should have been pleased, but no, he seemed a bit...
It's been a theme all season.
Yeah, and you just wonder, and this is extrapolated to an nth degree, but you do... We talked just previously about 4 or 5 years being an age. And, this season, is he showing signs of basically, you imagine the intensity, the mental... stress of what he's done in the last 3 seasons, in particular the last 2 seasons, 100 points and 98 points, 99 points. And the intensity with which he approaches games, the intensity he demands from his players, something that Sergio Aguero referred to in a recent book. And you do look at him now and you think, how much longer can you actually go through this huge, intense, battle with yourself and with trying to get your team still evolving, and how much longer can you do it? And he just seems a bit tetchy this season.
Is he paving the way, James?
I wouldn't like to say that. I mean, he was asked about Roy Hodgson. He said, could he go on that long? It's like, no chance. No chance. And
Forever.
He's consistent. I mean, I think by his own admission, he knows that. It's brutal what he puts into it. He said he was going to be easier on his players this season after really being on them. He'd seen that they could absolutely trusted, that there wasn't complacency, that they could go again. And I wonder if he's maybe starting to rethink that a little bit. And it's been interesting. There's been a lot of, obviously mentioned the sarcasm there about De Bruyne. There's been a lot of comments this year about we get nothing, we do it ourselves. And it seems to me, is that an attempt to build a bit of a siege mentality, which has worked very well for a lot of the great managers down the years? Is that his next move in play here? Lads, you're getting nothing from here. Just look at the Christmas fixtures. I mean, they've been sent out the CEO to complain about that this week, and I think they've got a point personally. But he's definitely been a bit twitching, but I think also you've got to look at City. Is they've not been the side that they were last year so far, but Sané's out until March. The second best defender in the Premier League is out. Their best defender, Laporte, is out till a similar period. Last year De Bruyne was out for 5 months. Silva, Aguero, Fernandinho all missed football. Most teams simply could not deal with it. I mean, if Liverpool lost, say, Mane equivalent to Sané and Van Dijk, it'd be really interesting to see how they deal with it. And I look at them this season, and it does look like they're trying to compensate for those issues in defence. And yesterday he played 2
Rodrigo and
midfielders at centre half. So, and I think the problem is that if he's maybe trying to overcompensate for the back, he might be tweaking a bit with the midfield and attack. And I think Guardiola's view has always been that attack is our best form of defence. Let's play in their third. And I think this year they did amazingly without De Bruyne last year. I don't know how they did it, but I think they have to keep him fit this year. I look at him now, and I just think when he is in that team, they're a totally different team.
Yeah, he's got that roving role because he was popping up everywhere yesterday at Selhurst Park, wasn't he? And another majestic performance from him and Manchester City. I want to move on to events at Goodison Park yesterday as well, Melissa. The Daily Star here says that Marco Silva dodged a bullet with that victory. Do you think if they hadn't won or if they had lost against West Ham, that would have been it?
He was certainly in a lot of trouble, and I think the most heartening thing for him yesterday and Everton fans would have been that the players responded to his tactical tweaks. I thought Everton looked like what their manager expects of them, what their fan base expects of them. They were excellent in transition, quick, they had purpose. I think part of their issues were you didn't really know what Everton wanted to achieve on the football pitch. What was their philosophy? Were they trying to play on the counter? Were they being possession-based? But yesterday you saw clear intent in everything that they did. I thought Gomez was excellent, Theo Walcott as well. Just all over the pitch you saw a reaction from the players, and I think Silva would have thought, I've still got the dressing room. I've still got them to be able to follow instructions. They were excellent defensively as well, gave West Ham hardly anything. And it was just a complete all-round performance. It's now about making sure that happens consistently.
I mean, they were, I guess, they were a little bit, I think it was a good team to play, West Ham, on one of their bad away days that they can have, for all their promise.
I keep being told, though, that they're the team that's going to break into the top
Who keeps telling you that?
Who
keeps saying that? All the West Ham fans. Well, listen, I'll tell you what. I mean, I've seen West Ham quite a bit. I was quite impressed when they beat Manchester United. When I saw them then, I think by the sound of it, they had one of those days that West Ham can produce, which is basically producing very little away from home, which they did, obviously yesterday. But I agree, Melissa. I think Everton there, that sort of performance does show that, the side still believes in the manager, believes in themselves. The players that you mentioned there, these are good players. Gomez, good player. Mina, a fantastic signing. I mean, and a guy who I think the fans will really take as a leader of this Everton team. He's the type of player that a club like Everton needs. An absolute leader in that team, a charismatic figure, a dominant defender. I think he'll be brilliant. Gomez, again, will be the sort of talisman that Everton fans can latch onto. I think Tom Davies getting restored in midfield, absolutely essential. You cannot say how essential it is to have a young homegrown player like Tom Davies in the middle of that park.
You've always been a fan, haven't you?
I have always been a fan. I like his attitude. I like his game. It's not spectacular, his game, but it's quick. He moves the ball forward quickly. He doesn't take any particular, desperate risks. I like it, and I like what he stands for, and I think that's very important to the club. And obviously, he has a family history with the club, which again I think lifts the fans, and it lifts the fans, and that's important to Goodison. For the fans to be energised. Well, what's characterised early performances where there was no atmosphere there. Even they played better when they were beaten 3-1 by City at home. But I was at that game, and I thought, what, the atmosphere is just not. It's a late kick-off. You're used to Goodison rocking for those sorts of games, literally for shaking, and it wasn't. It was dormant pretty much. So I think that's important. So that's why that's important yesterday. I thought the balance of that team looked right. And we can't just write Silver off again this early. We really can't. And again, Everton in the same situation where the new owner comes in. He just can't keep chopping and changing managers. This guy's got to have a little bit longer than people were prepared to give him. It might have been trouble had he lost yesterday, but I don't think it should have been. And we shouldn't also just judge him because his demeanour is not the demeanour of, say, the guy across Stanley Park, Jurgen Klopp. He's not like that. It's not his character. He is quite surly. He is quite intense. He is quite broody. But hey, if they're producing performances like that, they'll be fine. And I just think they've just got to get one or two more windows to get the recruitment correct. I think they've got to stop buying players who are not good enough for top four clubs. If you want to break into the top four, the big six, let's say you want to infiltrate the big six, if we're now counting United still in there, you don't sign players who are deemed not good enough. So, and I'm talking Walcott, talking Iwobi, and players like that. I just think that is slightly counterproductive. You've got to look for younger players who are on the ladder up.
Glory days is just around the corner.
Exactly. But they could be.
Positivity.
He didn't start Sigurdsson, did he? Were they moving the ball through midfield and to attack quicker without?
Yes, quicker without him. Yeah, quicker with Gomez and Davies. I think it looks a better It looked a better format from what I could see. I only saw the highlights. I was on my way down to
the problem with that, of course, is Sigurdsson then comes on and scores.
And scores a worldie. Yeah.
It's not a bad player to bring on off the bench, is it? I mean, you obviously referenced that performance yesterday, and you mentioned the City one. I mean, both of those performances don't look like a bunch of players who are not pulling for a manager. Yeah. I mean, far from it. I mean, they were, for that middle section of the game against City, they were really good. I mean, they had more shots, I think, City faced more shots on target than any team for about 4 years from Everton. So I think it's definitely the bones of something there. Just need some time. Yeah,
sure. OK, good win for Marco Silva. An important win for the Everton manager, 2-0 against West Ham at Goodison Park yesterday. OK, next up we're going to talk about Sheffield United. They play Arsenal tomorrow night, and then we'll reflect, so we'll talk a little bit more about Manchester United and Liverpool, that game this afternoon. Of course, it's on Sky. More on that in a moment. Welcome back. Tomorrow night, big game at Bramall Lane. It's Sheffield United against Arsenal. Let's talk about that game. Mesut Ozil's been talking this week to the Athletic, to David Ornstein, about his Arsenal career, what's left of it. Does he have a future? Will we see him in an Arsenal shirt again?
Well, according to Ozil, absolutely. You know, I mean, he's saying he wants to stay till at least 2021. You think he's going to have to be brought back into the fold at some point. I mean, I think the concern with him is the longer he stays out of it, you know, the longer it's going to take him to actually get back up to any sort of speed and actually be the sort of influence that we all know he can be. But I mean, I think if you can find a way of making that attack work with Aubameyang and Lacazette and Ozil, I mean, it looks pretty good to me. I mean, obviously Lacazette's had his injury problems, but I don't know if Emery has been trying to make a statement, but I think it would be. I think he needs to bring Ozil back. He's out that club. Doesn't look like they're going to find a buyer for him anytime soon. He's on £350,000 a week. I mean, if they are going to sell him, then they actually need to get into a position where he actually looks like a saleable asset again, who's playing. You know, I mean, that's going to be the first challenge. But it's not like you've got a huge troublemaker who has been absolutely useless. I mean, there's only, I think, 3 players who've claimed more assists in the time that Ozil's been in the Premier League. And he made an interesting point in the interview saying, you know, people talk about me not influencing and impacting the big games. Well, the results have been no different in the big games when I've not been there, which I thought was quite a bold thing to say, but, you know, he's got a point. I mean, I remember the number of times he's come up to Manchester and I've seen him, he's just been anonymous. But, you know, he is a high-quality footballer, particularly when the mood takes him. And you saw at Real Madrid some of the tactical demands that were placed on him, especially by Mourinho, and the jobs he did, were, you know, I mean, it took a high skill set to be able to perform and do what he did. And Guardiola always used to pinpoint him as a major problem. So I think he could add a lot and something different to that Arsenal team. And it would be nice to see him back.
The vibes you get from Ozil himself and his people is he's staying anyway. He's got a contract until, I think it's summer of 2021, is it? I think, off the top of my head. And he's going to stay anyway, whether he gets in the team or not, whether he gets in the squad or not. He's going to stay. You know, clearly, you know, despite obviously a scary instance off the field earlier in the season, he clearly likes where he is in terms of being based in London. Now, if he's going to stay, and as you know, as everyone knows how much money he's being paid, he's one of those footballers we all know this headline figure. If he's staying, then it's Emery's duty to get the best out of him, and you know, to use him, and I think he might now. You know, I think there may have been some problems over the last couple of weeks, but I think he might start using him now. And how can you not use him? To me, he's one of the best players I've seen in the Premier League. I mean, you know, I'm a huge fan of Mesut Ozil. I just, you know,
he's getting better the longer he's out of the team here, isn't he? He's one of those. It's like a manager. It's like an absent manager.
Yeah, like Anthony Martial from Manchester United. You know, you can't wait to welcome him back. You know, it's like he's become a world beater. Just wait till we get Martial back. Oh yeah, that'll solve everything. You know, and I don't think that's quite the case with Ozil. But I don't think any player in the recent history of the Premier League has had more unfair criticism than Mesut Ozil. Oof. I mean, when he says he has been made a scapegoat, absolutely the biggest scapegoat I think that we've seen.
He was for his country as well.
We've seen. Yes, I mean, I don't exactly know the background and what happened there, but I do know in English football it's because of the way he plays the game, because of what is perceived as poor body language, because his shoulders stoop down, because he walks, you know, so...
But we also know he could be running games. That's the thing with him, isn't it?
Well, you can't...
Is the nice touches here and there.
But not everyone can go around clenching a fist and screaming at the crowd and sort of...
You don't need to do that to run a football match, do you?
But does he
be the architect? You don't need to... David Silva doesn't do that. Runs football matches.
Yeah, but if you put Mesut Ozil in the City team...
Yes.
Yeah, different story.
Pep, take him.
Yeah, Pep, take him. Jose would take him. Listen, the testimonies from great coaches about Mesut Ozil are many, and it's just I just think it's a shame that if you can't get him in that team, if you can't get him playing football in the Premier League.
Okay, let's go back to today's game, Melissa, and it's a huge game, pivotal game here. Could be the 9th successive victory in the Premier League. Liverpool. That's the anticipation. That's what everybody expects. Will they go on to do it?
Old Trafford is never a nice place to go for Liverpool. I think the crowd will be up for it. I think Klopp painted it perfectly when he said, this is a game, if you're United's manager and you're struggling, you think, come on, this is the perfect opportunity. No one expects us to win. Look at all the coverage. Look at the combined XIs and all that stuff. There's so much in this fixture to motivate United. Last season, Liverpool should have won at Old Trafford. United had injury problems leading into the game, then injury problems in the first half, and they were there for the taking. And Liverpool were cautious, they were risk averse because they thought they had points to play with in the title race, and they felt that it wasn't possible that City could, go the rest of the season winning every game and stuff. I think they've learnt lessons from that game at Old Trafford and when they played Everton, and they were too safe because it doesn't matter how many points ahead of City. You have to be near perfect to win this league, as they found out that 97 points weren't enough. So I do not expect to see a cautious Liverpool. It will be interesting, however, because they know United cannot play with the ball. United thrive off transition. Their only weapon is the counter. I think Liverpool defend counters very well, but I'd also be interested to see whether they actually give United the ball and counter them.
I think that's right.
Could the Manchester United crowd accept that? Here are Liverpool.
To a certain extent.
If they win, yeah.
If they win, yes. If they get, I remember, was it a couple of years ago or 3 years ago?
When do they play like that? When are they allowed to play like that?
Well, they've played. When did Rashford give Alexander-Arnold the torrid time? A couple of years ago.
2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago, and that's the sort of basically not surrendering possession, but being okay, not in possession, and getting that ball quickly, and maybe even long and direct, is probably their best way forward today. I genuinely think that way. They're not going to pass the way through Liverpool. Yeah. And United, and don't forget, United, while, again, the mood music coming out of United is we must play attacking football, they're not saying we must play football in the style of Guardiola and City. It can be more direct, it can be quicker, it can be fewer passes going forward. And that will be the case today. They're not going to pass the way through
the game.
James, have they got a style?
United? I think it's hard to discern.
Right. Because we can instantly pinpoint them.
Yeah, I think they've looked the best at Solskjær when they have played on the counter-attack, which is, he said, it's not the way that they want to do it. He wants them to have the ball and play more on the front foot. But as we've seen against, forget the leading lights in the Premier League, as we've seen against the low teams, when you have 2 banks of 4 in front of them, they are short of ideas. And the game, I don't think we can get away from the fact that this game has generally always been scrappy. It's not always. It's rarely been a great game, and I think for Solskjær, it's a way of trying to limit Liverpool's strengths and sort of maximise wherever possible their own. And if they go try and break down Liverpool and they have all the ball, and then Liverpool on the break with that front three.
That's naivety. And you mentioned possession, Ash. I remember earlier in the season they played Leicester City and beat them and had less possession than Leicester at Old Trafford. So will the crowd stomach having less possession if they win? Absolutely they will.
And I think if you actually look in the United dressing room, generally going into this game, you want, as we talked before about your senior professionals sort of taking the lead. This game's actually going to be, McTominay's going to be very important for United. Rashford's going to be very important. I will play Tuanzebe. I think he's one of the most accomplished footballers, even though he's very inexperienced, but he knows what the fixture means. And you're looking around and you're like, who is going to take command for United in that side? And this is where I think for some of those players, big game. Yeah,
it's a big game at Old Trafford this afternoon. Manchester United against Liverpool. OK, that's all we've got time for. We've run out of time. Thanks very much to the guests. Thanks to Andy, to Melissa and to James. We'll see you at Old Trafford in a few hours' time. OK, don't forget to download the podcast from all the usual places. Catch up with the show, it's on demand. We're back next week at 10 o'clock. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.